Hey everyone, Morgan here. So, for this month's podcast, we decided to re-release one of our most popular segments, Maintaining Healthy Relationships with Elizabeth Hinkle. So, this episode was originally hosted by Alex and Sarah and aired way back in 2019. We really hope you enjoy this throwback, and we cannot wait to see you next month with something new. Hope you enjoy!
You're listening to the Lowdown Podcast, brought to you by Sigma Kappa National Headquarters staff. We'll focus on topics like health, wellness, the fraternity and sorority community, higher education, and life skills that women need in all stages of their lives. We'll also feature stories from inspiring and empowering Sigma Kappas. Check out the Sigma Kappa website for regular updates and new episodes.
Welcome back to the Lowdown Podcast. Today we are joined with Elizabeth Hinkle, who is a therapist and counselor for Talkspace, which is an online counseling app. Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? What sort of therapies or counseling you specialize in?
Sure. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Virginia and have been practicing since finishing graduate school, which was 15 years ago. Hard to believe it's been that long. And I specialize in, of course, working with relationships, families, marriages, couples. They don't have to be married even. And also have a lot of experience working with children and adolescents.
As you're going through all the different type of relationships, those can, like every single one of them, none of them are easy. They're all difficult. Can you tell us a little bit more about what makes relationships more difficult today? And how does that impact our mental health when it comes to these relationships?
I think we have a real culture of instant gratification with technology, which, as we know, comes with pros and cons. I know many people my clients talk about things such as, well, I texted him and he didn't text me right back, or we just want to be connected so much. And we are connected. It's ironic that they're sort of cordless and mobile devices when we feel so tethered to them sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
And so instant gratification in the sense of, I want an answer right now, we need to talk. That can put a lot of pressure on all types of relationships, whether it's families or partners or friendships.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, so I really like the whole aspect of generations. And do you see more that these younger generations are having more difficulty connecting with other people, that they're even more tied to their technology, or is it just kind of across the board that everyone has this technology kind of issue? I don't want to call it an issue, but
They're just not connecting as much in person.
Yes.
They care a lot about the technology aspect of it.
I think the connections are evolving. They're just different. So a lot of people might be critical of teenagers, for example, of, they don't have social skills. They don't know how to have conversations face to face. And I think that's partly true. I don't think it's quite that black and white. They connect in different ways. So the ways that we communicated, or I communicated when I was in high school, are very different than the way high schoolers right now, or young people, college age people, are communicating. And it's not necessarily that they don't still connect. It's just, I think, in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those face-to-face skills are maybe a little bit lost along the way. The nonverbal communication, which we know is so much a part of communicating, can often be lost in translation.
Mm-hmm. So kind of thinking of that, can you talk a little bit about some of the modern terminology that we're hearing, which I think has kind of developed through the technology we have? I know the one that is probably most common is ghosting, which you're texting with someone and then kind of never hear from them again, even when you send them messages. Can you go into some of the other ones that are out there?
Sure, there's so many, and they're constantly, I feel like, new ones coming out every day. Again, working with teenagers, I try to keep up with the lingo, but ghosting, I saw something really funny on Instagram today about that. Somebody wrote, or maybe it was a tweet originally, that it's funny we call it ghosting because ghosts actually stick around to sort of haunt you. And in real life, when you ghost somebody, you actually don't ever want to be seen again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, see, that's funny that you say that, because I have been married for almost 9 years now. And so I did not deal with any of this type of dating lingo. And it's so funny because I'm like, I don't, well, that doesn't mean that to me. It goes, that's
Yeah,
exactly
she
like
asked
the
about
go.
something last week, and I was like, no, that's not what that means.
Right. And so one of the ones that we know about also is orbiting, that, the person maybe doesn't want to date you anymore, but somehow stays up in your space. And again, that's back to technology with, I follow you on Instagram because we go on a couple of dates and then I don't want to talk to you anymore, but I'm still looking at your Instagram or whatever kind of social media. And so, there are just so many out there. I can't even think of other ones right now. The list goes on and it's constantly changing, right?
Right.
I feel like a big one that Sarah and I always have conversations about is like dating versus talking. Are there any others under that?
It's just funny, the whole talking aspect, because
That's definitely new.
Yeah, I'll say that to someone and they're like, so what does that mean? Are you seeing that person? Like, and it's sort of,
but even dating, is it official? Like, or do you still have to ask, like, do you want to be my boyfriend? Do you want to be my girlfriend? Like, do you still have to ask that question? I don't know. I don't get it. I'm glad I'm married.
It depends on the person.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. I know a client I have who's in his 20s told me he officially asked his girlfriend to be his girlfriend. So I think it just varies on the person and what they're looking for. And that can also be one of the challenges, I think, with relationships is people are looking for different things. Some people want to keep it super casual and see other people. Some people want commitment and more of a serious relationship. And to me, one of the key parts about that is just being as open and honest as you can be and really communicating that.
Yeah.
But really, the dating scene can be extremely ruthless sometimes. Can you give us a few examples of how to protect ourselves in a world where it's swiping and ghosting and maybe even a lack of commitment?
I think when I think of protecting ourselves, I think of two different things. And one is physical safety, things like being smart about meeting up in public. If you just have connected with somebody, say on a dating app, and you don't know them, that you're being safe and protecting yourself from situations. I don't know if you all saw Dirty John on Bravo.
No.
Heard about that story?
Mm-mm.
It's a fascinating story. It's based on real life of a woman who met up with a guy who had some real issues, let's say, just to put it mildly. And she immediately let him come to pick her up at her home. And that's a dangerous thing, as we know. So there's protecting yourself that way. And then there's protecting yourself emotionally. And I think of things like, again, sort of managing your own expectations, being really clear about what you want, and taking things slow. We don't have to kind of rush things along as much as sometimes I think it feels like for people.
Do you have any suggestions for people who are in relationships with someone who's completely different from them? So, for an example, one partner wants to spend all of their free time together. The other one might be a little bit more introverted and wants me time, or introverted versus being a social butterfly. How to assert boundaries for a happy, healthy, and fulfilling relationship?
Yeah, so the expression opposites attract come to mind. And so a lot of times this is the case for people. There's somebody who's much more extroverted in the relationship. It's, not as common to have two extremely extroverted people get together, but that can happen too. Again, I think that the thing about communication, one, respecting each other's differences, acknowledging I'm an introvert. I'm not in real life. I'm an extrovert actually, but one person saying, okay, this is how I enjoy spending my free time. I need downtime for quiet to recharge. And the other person just acknowledging that you have differences that way, and that's okay. That you're not necessarily looking to each other to meet all of your needs. We can't put that pressure on any one person, whether it's a friend or a partner or a family member, that we need to learn how to get our needs met through various relationships and activities. And that it is okay to spend time apart. that being a healthy, happy couple or in a partnership or dating, whatever you call it, that still means there's time apart, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it can even be hard when you're both so alike. So my husband and I would say we're both introverts. I mean, I like to be social, but the way I energize myself is definitely being alone or with people I know and trust. So sometimes we can find ourselves just not getting out and not going and seeing other people. We spend up like we're very family oriented, but I think if one of us was more of an extrovert than the other one, it might help us to get out and maybe even just spend more time with friends. I think we sometimes struggle with that. And so I think the opposite can actually happen too when thinking of like, oh, completely different. Yeah, that would be hard. But sometimes it's also hard to have someone that's so much like you.
It's a
That's
balance.
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys might not get out as much as you'd actually like to.
I think there's other reasons for that as well. Kids and
Alex has 4 of those.
yeah.
So.
Yes, just being tired all the time. But let's go into, you've been dating or seeing someone, or maybe even you haven't. I guess, really it comes down to consent. So we just know that consent has been a very important topic right now. And so do you have any tips for women to establish boundaries and communicate what they truly want from a relationship?
Yeah, it's really important for everybody to, whether again you're dating or it's serious or in long-term committed relationships, that you're respecting your own needs and wants, and that your partner is doing the same thing too. And we know consent is a really serious topic, and it's gotten a lot of attention in recent years. And I'm glad for that, because I think it's helped start a lot of conversations, or continued a lot of conversations that we need to be having.
Yeah.
As women, as men, everybody needs to talk about it and feel comfortable with what you're doing, that you're acknowledging there's no right or wrong with these things. It's a very personal decision, and that you are expressing yourself, communicating, these are my limits and boundaries. But even before that, that you even know what those are for yourself, that you're thinking those through and you're talking through about that. And then back to situations you might be in, one thing that you want to consider is what you're choosing to do with, for example, drinking alcohol. And it's not at all that anyone is ever to blame if someone crosses their boundaries, but you might cross your own boundaries by having a few drinks and losing that judgment, decision-making process. We know impulse control, things like that, the brain's affected with drugs and alcohol. And so you might put yourself in a situation where you're not following your own boundaries and later feel distressed about that. So that's an important component too.
So if women do set boundaries and they get crossed without their consent, how can we support them? How can you support yourself if that happens to you?
I think talking about it, telling the person that that's not okay, being assertive, advocating for yourself, and then getting support from friends, family, therapists, other professionals as needed, as appropriate. Those are the kinds of steps that you can take, just knowing that it's okay to talk about it and not blaming yourself, because that doesn't get us very far when we start directing a lot of blame and judgment. So really just saying with the facts of, this is what happened. I wasn't happy about it. I didn't like it. It's not okay. Being willing to communicate that and saying no when you need to and want to. I heard a great quote from Jane Fonda. I was watching a show about feminists on Netflix, and she said she just learned in the past 10 years that no is a complete sentence.
Yeah. I've read that.
I really like that a lot, that we can say no and not have to give an explanation for anything.
Yeah. No period.
So
That's
true. I kind of want to go into the not about consent, but about support. So take both sides of, so you are the person and you want to go talk to someone. What if they don't support you? What if they come back and it's not the response you gave? How would you um, help them move forward with that without like taking blame on from this other person that maybe doesn't support them? And then maybe even going to the other side of it. And as a person, if they come to you, how to be supportive, what to say, what maybe not to say, what to advise. So both sides. So someone isn't being supported, and then a person that should be supportive.
When you're not being supported, I think really just saying, this is what I need, this is what I want for support, and helping the other person to understand when you say that, that really bothers me or that hurts my feelings. The good old I statements of, I feel upset when you take that approach with me. That's not really helpful or what I'm looking for. And again, that I think of advocating and being assertive about, this is what is going to help me.
Yeah.
And you might not get it from person A. So sometimes it's about letting those expectations go and move on to a couple of different people who are maybe more aware, understanding, or savvy to what some helpful responses would be.
Yeah.
And then in terms of helpful responses, again, I think not judging, not blaming, really being there for that person, asking them, what do you need? What's going to be helpful? Because depending on the relationship and how close you are with them and who they are, sometimes people just want to be listened to and heard and validated. And so I think those are things that are really helpful and important to do.
Yeah, I like how you said you want to ask them what they want, because maybe going to a police or an authority figure is not what they want, but listening is just what they need. So I like that aspect of it, that you ask them first.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be based on what works for them.
Unfortunately, all of us are going to be faced with rejection at some level, at some point in our lives, probably several times. But some women are shutting themselves down and sabotaging what could be a happy relationship because of fear. Do you have any tips for that and how to prevent that from happening?
Sure. Fear and anxiety can really come up and play a part in self-sabotage with relationships. And there are a couple of thoughts that I have about that. One is being aware of how you're feeling, being curious about it, thinking, I wonder what's coming up for me right now. What's this fear about? What are these worries about? And really being able to think through them and maybe talk about it with a friend, maybe even taking it to the next level and going to therapy and processing some things with a therapist at some point. If you notice there are patterns for yourself, there's always going to be, like you said, times that we're getting rejected in relationships. And sometimes it's, not really that personal. It's just not a great match, or the chemistry isn't there, or maybe you remind them of somebody from their past. A lot of times it's not really about you, but it's hard not to take those things personally. But kind of reminding yourself that, this isn't about me not being good enough. This is about this relationship isn't a match.
Yeah. When you're in those unhealthy relationships or you have these fears, what can you do to kind of get yourself out of that with like self-care? And why is it so important to do this self-care, to have these happy and healthy relationships, to get to that point?
So when I think of self-care, first of all, I know self-care is like a hot topic, and those words are thrown around a lot lately. And
bath bombs and face masks and things.
Oh my gosh. Face masks are all over the place.
Exactly. And I was just about to say, you took the words out of my mouth. Self-care is not just about bath bombs and face masks, although I did have a face mask earlier and it was delightful. So it can certainly include things like that, doing things for yourself, nurturing yourself. It also can include a lot of other things. Some of the things we've already been talking about, like boundary setting, I think of that as self-care. Saying no, whether it's to, a date who wants to do something physical and you're not ready, or it's to a friend who asks you to help volunteer at something and you don't have the time or energy for it, that's a form of self-care. To say no, to set limits, to respect your own boundaries like that. And I think it's really important to do those things for ourselves, to take care of ourselves, because if we don't do that, nobody else is going to.
Yeah. Do you have a tip on like, should you do it every week? Should you focus on something every month? Like, what is your kind of tip when it comes to how often you should do self-care? I guess not really like setting boundaries, but other types of self-care to make sure that you are in a healthy, happy mindset.
I'm a big fan of a daily habit, and it can be something really small that doesn't take much time. Maybe it's 5 minutes of quiet time when you wake up, or finding, a quick yoga workout to do, or going for a walk at lunch. There's all kinds of ways that I think we can build small things into our days so that it doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. Like, well, once a week I have to do this thing that's adding another thing to my life, or that seems to be taking a lot of time. But really, like, these small daily things that we can choose to do.
I like that idea. And the whole thing about right when you wake up doing something that takes like 5 minutes, because I know probably the majority of us just grab our phone. Our phone is our alarm clock. We instantly go on social media. I'm one of those too. But just to take like 5 minutes without doing that, or just think about reasons to be grateful for the day, or something I've heard is like a good way to just start your day off in a positive, happy mindset.
Sometimes I drive to work with no music and no podcast or anything playing. And then people think I'm weird when I say that, but just like the silence and almost like a meditation, or if you want to pray, or, anything that can just almost like set yourself up for the day is kind of like how I think of it. And I don't know, I just really like that. Again, it might just be me with a quiet time, but 25, 30 minutes of quiet time in the morning is just beautiful. And that's actually kind of what rejuvenates me and gets me to my happy place before I get to work. And then, of course, I'm at my happy place. But
I agree. I think quiet time is really underrated. And again, with kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation, with like the fast-paced technology, phone driven kind of world that we're in, we don't often get a lot of just quiet moments. I notice a lot of my clients have difficulty with silence. If I don't say something fast enough, or if we're not moving through an activity quickly enough, that it's hard to slow down and really just enjoy these quiet moments. And I think those are helpful for all of us. It gives us a moment just to reflect, whether it's gratitude or meditation or whatever route you want to take it.
I think something else, we were in just like a webinar series, and they said at the end of the day, when you're driving home, which I have about a 25, 30-minute commute, said like take the last two things, or take two things that went right that day and focus on them. And you're just reminding me, like, that's a healthy habit to get into. So maybe it's just your commute, you have a longer commute, and you have this time, and I need to start doing that. And so it helps me focus. Maybe if I've had a rough day or a really busy day, to decompress and think about two positives that day. And by the time I get home, I feel like I would have a completely different mindset than when I left work. I'm going to do that today.
That's a great
Sarah's gonna keep me accountable.
Research has shown that putting our mind to things, positive things that happened or things we're grateful for, does actually improve our mood.
Well, for our listeners, if you've heard Lindsay Picardo, one of our first episodes, she mentioned that it takes 13 or 15 seconds of just thinking about, if someone gives you a compliment or something, just really thinking about that for it to set in, because we remember all the negatives, but if someone gives us a compliment or a positive piece of feedback, it kind of just bounces off of us. So you really need to think about those things to set those and ingrain them in yourselves.
Absolutely. I did hear that podcast. I really liked that one a lot.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. She and I think a lot alike, I think. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, she's a very positive person. Yeah. She's also very outgoing, kind of like you. So I'm sure you would get along. But this has all just been super great and helpful information. And we know that not everyone is in a romantic relationship, or maybe even wants to be, but we know that most everyone has friends. So how can we take this information and apply it to our non-romantic relationships and friendships?
That's a great question. I would agree that not everybody's interested in a romantic relationship for various reasons. And at different points in our lives, we might not just be in that situation. So these are skills that I think do translate a lot to friendships with things like boundaries. So sometimes friends can not necessarily communicate real well with each other about likes or dislikes or preferences. I think of like a small example, like say you want to go shopping together, and my style is more to go from place to place rather quickly, and my friend's style is to really take her time at each spot, and that's kind of driving me crazy, but maybe I don't want to say anything because I don't want to hurt her feelings. And then I'm frustrated and don't want to spend time with her again after that. So it might just be about saying something like, hey, why don't we split up for 30 minutes or take a break? Like just those kinds of things about respecting each other's differences and communicating and not taking things personally when you notice some differences like that.
I don't think people think of boundaries when they think of friendships. I feel like they only think romantic relationships when they think of boundaries.
Or most often.
Yeah, really. I mean, usually with friendships, you're going to probably even spend more time with each other. So you should set some of those boundaries up front. I've never even thought about that until now.
Yeah, I think boundaries are important for all types of relationships.
Yeah.
Family, we often need them even as adult children.
Yeah.
We need to draw some lines with our parents or siblings. So yeah, they really come in handy.
Yeah, I completely agree about drawing lines with family and those type of relationships. Those are some of the hardest lines I think to draw because they are family. So good luck with
especially
that.
when you join families in particular too. I don't have experience in that yet, but
yes. Yeah,
the whole in-law dynamic. Yeah.
It's like
that's
more
a different podcast, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll have you back on to talk about family relationships.
I would love to anytime.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, so much for joining us. If you are a Sigma Kappa member, Sigma Kappa has partnered with Talkspace to give all collegians 3 months free of counseling. So you're able to take advantage of that. If you're an alumna member, you do get a discount. You can go to the Sigma Kappa website for that. And even if you're not a Sigma Kappa member, Talkspace has all sorts of plans that you can take advantage of. If you're needing counseling and can't make it into a therapist's office, it's all virtual. So we'll have those resources and more linked on our show notes page if you're interested.
Yeah, thanks again. This was really awesome.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for having me.